The film begins with Eve Macarro, bruised and bloodied, sitting in a hospital while holding a spinning ballerina toy. A flashback reveals her peaceful life with her father, Javier, until their home is invaded by armed men. Javier hides Eve inside a secret wall compartment and swiftly takes down the attackers, but is eventually captured. Their leader, known as the Chancellor, arrives and accuses Javier of taking his wife, who had originally been part of the cult, away from him. He blames Javier for her defection and death, claiming it disrupted the cult's order. The Chancellor gives Javier a cruel choice: use a gun loaded with one bullet to end his own life and spare Eve, or attempt to kill him and guarantee both their deaths. Just as Javier prepares to pull the trigger on himself, Eve calls out from behind the wall. Choosing to protect her, he kills the remaining attackers but is shot in the process. Javier manages to escape with Eve before a bomb he planted detonates, killing the rest, except the Chancellor. Javier then dies from his wounds in front of his daughter. At the hospital, Eve is approached by Winston Scott, who offers his sympathies and a chance to be taken in by her father's family. She agrees, and Winston escorts her to the home of the Ruska Roma, where she is introduced to the director. Over the next 12 years, Eve trains relentlessly under the director, perfecting ballet by day and sharpening her combat and firearm skills with Nogi by night. She pushes herself to the brink, dancing until her feet bleed, driven by a desire to become stronger. Her transformation into a kikimora, a term used for elite assassins, is swift and brutal. Despite her progress, Eve remains isolated, forming only one real bond with a fellow trainee named Tatiana. One day, she discovers Tatiana's belongings are gone. The director informs her that Tatiana was dismissed, deemed unfit for the unforgiving demands of the Ruska Roma. Eventually, Eve faces her final test. She's locked in a room with Petra, a rogue assassin who once trained under the Ruska Roma. Petra cryptically tells Eve that she is her in 10 years, suggesting the dark path Eve might follow if she loses herself. The test is brutal. Both must assemble a gun and shoot the other within a time limit. Eve completes the task with precision and speed, outclassing Petra and delivering a fatal shot well before Petra can react. Later, the other trainees are stunned when the Ruska Roma home is visited by none other than John Wick, who is seeking aid from the director. Curious and eager, Eve approaches John and asks how she can enter the field and become like him. John tells her that she could always walk out or make the choice herself to be like him. Soon after, the director assigns Eve her first mission: protect the young woman named Katla Park from an incoming target, Il Seong. Eve tracks Katla to a nightclub and keeps watch as Seong and his henchmen close in with hostile intent. Without hesitation, Eve confronts them, unleashing her training in a brutal fight. She eliminates the guards and ultimately kills Seong by viciously stabbing him with the claw end of a hammer. Afterward, she safely escorts Katla out of the club. 2 months pass, and Eve has just completed another hit, taking down several men inside an apartment. But as she drives away, a van slams into her car. 2 armed attackers leap out, attempting to kill her, but Eve dispatches them with deadly efficiency. On one of the men, she notices a distinctive X-shaped scar on his wrist, the same symbol worn by those who killed her father. She severs the man's hand and brings it to the director, demanding answers. The director confirms the symbol belongs to a cult, but reminds Eve of the fragile truce between the Ruska Roma and the cult. They stay out of each other's affairs. She warns Eve to abandon her quest for revenge or face serious consequences. Eve makes her way to the Continental Hotel, where she checks in with Charon before seeking out Winston. Though Winston cautions her against getting involved with the cult, Eve presents him with the gold token he once gave her when they first met. Reluctantly, Winston agrees to help and assigns her a task: track down an assassin named Daniel Pine, who might lead her to the cult. Eve locates Pine at the Continental Hotel in Prague. She manages to sneak into his room, where she unexpectedly discovers his young daughter Ella. Tensions rise as both Eve and Pine draw their weapons, but after Eve explains she's only after information about the cult, the standoff ends peacefully. Meanwhile, in the hotel lobby, Lena, an operative for the Chancellor, spots Eve and informs him of her presence. Despite the sacred rule of no bloodshed on continental grounds, the Chancellor orders his cult members to eliminate her. To ensure their loyalty, he doubles the bounty on Daniel Pine's head, hoping it will tempt others to break the rules. Assassins attempt to breach Pine's room, but one is instantly killed by a hidden booby trap. The remaining two are taken on by Eve and Pine in a fierce fight. They manage to escape the hotel with Ella, but outside, both Eve and Pine are overpowered and Ella is kidnapped. Eve wakes up beside the two other cult members who had attacked her. Because she didn't break the Continental Sacred Rule, she never killed anyone on hotel grounds, she is spared execution. The other two aren't so lucky, and are gunned down in a brutal hail of bullets. The hotel manager informs Eve that she must now check out. Later, Eve visits a weapons dealer named Frank and questions him about the cult. He's reluctant to speak, brushing off her inquiries. But while showing her his inventory, cold gunmen suddenly attack the shop. In the chaos, Frank is shot in the hand, but Eve manages to take out the attackers. Grateful for her help, Frank reveals what he knows. The cult's hidden location is rumored to be in the Austrian mountains. Eve travels to the remote town of Hallstatt, a place quietly populated by secret assassins. She enters a local tavern, but is soon recognized and targeted by cult operatives. A violent fight breaks out, and Eve eliminates several attackers. However, the worker Agneta secretly calls for reinforcements. More cult members arrive, leading to an intense battle. Eve takes them on and eventually shoots Agneta in the head. She then heads into the basement, where she arms herself with guns and grenades to continue the fight. Though Eve manages to kill most of her attackers, she's eventually overpowered. Her jacket is torn open, exposing her Ruska Roma tattoo, revealing her true identity to the Chancellor. Eve is soon confronted by the Chancellor and Lena, who drops a shocking revelation. Lena is actually Eve's long-lost sister. Consumed by resentment, Lena accuses Eve of being the favored one, taken away by her father Javier to live a better life, while she was left behind to be raised within the cult. She also blames Javier for her mother's death. The Chancellor then reveals another twist. Daniel Pine is his son, making little Ella his granddaughter. He intends to mold Ella into a killer, claiming she was chosen, unlike the Ruska Roma trainees, who have the freedom to choose their paths. With tensions high, the Chancellor orders his men to eliminate both sisters. Grenades are thrown into the room. Lena is killed in the blast, but Eve survives. In response, the Chancellor contacts the director and declares Eve's rogue actions an act of war. Though the director denies sending Eve, she agrees to send someone to stop her. The Chancellor gives her until midnight. Either she handles Eve, or war between the Ruska Roma and the cult is unavoidable. As the deadline approaches, Eve prepares for a final showdown. John Wick arrives, sent by the director to stop her. Despite knowing how dangerous he is, Eve refuses to back down. The two engage in a fierce fight. John proves to be the superior fighter, overpowering her multiple times and urging her to walk away. But Eve is relentless. Realizing that the Chancellor murdered her father, John ultimately agrees to step aside and let Eve face him so long as she does it before midnight. Eve enters the town just as the Chancellor summons every available assassin to take her down. She grabs a flamethrower and starts torching the cultist goons, mowing them through with brutal efficiency. But soon, the Chancellor's right-hand man, Dex, arrives with a flamethrower of his own, right as Eve's runs out of fuel. Thinking quickly, she grabs a fire hose and uses it to deflect the flames until they're face to face. Before Dex can fire another blast, John snipes his fuel tank, causing a fiery explosion that takes Dex out and clears a path for Eve to move forward. Meanwhile, the Chancellor attempts to flee with Ella, guarded by a squad of gunmen. Eve catches up and tears through the guards with lethal precision until only she and the Chancellor remain. He begins to monologue, claiming that his death won't change anything, but Eve cuts him off mid-sentence with a bullet to the head. She rescues Ella and walks away, while John informs the director that the Chancellor is dead and Eve is still alive. Ella is later reunited with her father at the hospital. As for Eve, she checks into the New York Continental and is next seen attending a ballet performance. But peace is short-lived. A $5 million bounty is suddenly placed on her head. Eve sees the contract pop up and notices others in the theater receiving the same alert. Realizing what's about to unfold, she quietly exits the building, preparing for whatever comes next. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.